Hello and welcome back to OT the podcast. We're here to talk about watches, time, and how to spend it reading Jason Heaton's latest novel, Sweetwater.
Well, we're not reading it yet. We're going to wait for it to arrive in the post. I'm Philly Schultz. I don't know. Do we still do that?
For those new here.
I want to be more like TGN. Can we be cooler? How do we make that happen?
I think we need to spend a lot of time with Jason and James.
Just being like chill.
I think you're born at their level of cool. I think you're born that way. I don't think you can. It can't be learned. It can't be taught. It's a state of being. But Jason did. I didn't think Jason could get cooler, and then it turns out, big Alone fan, just like you and I, Felix.
Obviously,
makes total sense. And I love that. Without giving any spoilers away, I love that he backs himself on there. He's got confidence.
I suspect that. I can't really imagine Jason Heaton binging something. I reckon he stops whittling, stops brewing his own whiskey, turns on, cranks up the TV to watch only one episode of Alone at a time.
Nah, I reckon those long winters. I think he smashes it out. Anyway, enough about Alone. We're not alone. I've got you. You've got me, and we've got Jason.
We do. We've also got a chat coming up with just you and me. No Mike Pearson this week. He's left us. He's got other things to be doing.
Yeah.
But we're still talking about Zodiac. We're talking about colour, fun. So stay tuned for that. Before that, update, Andy. Mm-hmm. Update from the perennially popular episode with Alan Hammerlaw, as seen on Hodinkee. The first part, like the actual auction part, has finished. There's still some available online. 95% of the lot sold, earning a cool 1.6 million, which I suspect will do some sort of genuinely positive work in the Australian community, which is great. Good result.
Yeah, he seems to be happy with the outcome and sort of the.
Has he updated? I haven't seen his socials. Has he?
Yeah. I think he sort of enjoyed the catch up. I think it's given him opportunity. A lot of his friends have flown in. A lot of people have come in from all over the world to sort of be there to bid on things, and he's got to meet a whole lot of people, which I think has probably been quite special.
Yep.
I think it's probably been a bit of a strange experience, but I think he's having a good time over there and sort of probably letting go of a lot of things. So yeah, and the reception to him has been amazing. Everyone is bringing it up and messaging us. So
I mean, yeah, and it's a timely reminder, about what can be a very, very commercial and sort of status-driven hobby or pursuit.
Yeah,
it doesn't just have to be that; it can be more.
Speaking of commercials, this week's episode of OT the podcast is brought to you by Zodiac Watches. We couldn't do it without our sponsors and without support, so we are forever grateful to those brands that do join us. Mike Pearson, he's been around watches for 10 years. You've heard him last week and the week before. He's at Zodiac. He's doing great work, and I'm personally quite happy to have Zodiac on board. Felix, you mentioned colour and bold design. What's happening on that front?
Well, look, I mean, for me, I'm wearing at the moment the most colourful watch combination I can manage. It's a Zodiac Super Seawolf that I believe is referred to as the watermelon on a rainbow NATO. But Zodiac, as we've sort of discussed with Mike, they do colour really well. And I think brands have, a few sort of hallmarks, like, Bulgari do ultra thin and other people do other things, but Zodiac, I think one of the first things you think about is their use of interesting colours. Like, they're not just playing with the same 4 primary colours that most Swiss brands do, and they're using it in really sort of fun ways. Like Mike talked about the Super Seawolf skeleton with the rainbow sort of, but not like a traditional rainbow, like a kind of a, I don't know, 90s hypercolor, rainbow bezel. We've mentioned many, many times now that I'm sure we're getting commission on any sales at this point, the worn and mounted laser tag edition.
Yep.
And of course,
two variants there.
Yeah, there's some other spicy references, mostly the Super Seawolf. What are you What are you drawn to in their sort of coloured offerings, Andy?
I mean, I like the laser tag because it's not your, like you've mentioned color, it's not your standard colors. Like even the pineapple, the greens and the yellows they've chosen are sort of very tropical, but not tropical in a palette that you would sort of immediately jump to. Like they're sort of yellowy greens that you might, if I describe them to you, you might not actually like, but when you see the execution, the whole package, the packaging, the palm strap, the palm on the box, or the frongs, like it does work. I think that the pineapple is pretty cool. I think so there's two laser tags, right? There's the infrared and the ultraviolet.
Okay.
I think the ultraviolet, which is like sort of the darker purple, is pretty cool. I like even the patterns as well, like the patterns that they put on the dial. It's not most brands were to do this, they do like a solid color dial and a colorful bezel, and that's it. Whereas Zodiac, the bezel has 3 or 4 different colors. The dial has 6 different colors, and Lume, the hands are different colors. Both hands are different colors with Lume. So there's 3 different colors on the handset. Like they really kind of throw color and boldness your way, but it's not kind of obnoxious, and it's not, in the way of anything. Like it's the DNA, I think, of Zodiac these days.
The other thing I appreciate is that it's not just limited to the limited editions. You know what I mean? Like it's not uncommon for a brand to go, yeah, sure, we'll try a pink watch, and they'll make 300, and if they sell, that's great. Some of their most popular, certainly if I'm, to take the website as a clue, models are their sort of core Super Seawolves. There's the one with that watermelon bezel. Like that sort of pale pastel minty green is an odd choice, but they make it work, especially with the orange. And then there's the one with the white bezel and the orange highlights. So it's like they're part of the core collection, and then there may be risks that the brand took that have now become fairly iconic in the modern day, which I think, I don't know, more brands need to do it, and Zodiac do it really, really well.
Yeah, well, they're doing the white ceramic as well in the Super Seawolf for $1,800 US, white ceramic on a kind of, so you can go for that similar sort of green dial, white ceramic case with the orange inner ring, and then get a nice textile kind of green rubber strap.
Yeah.
So you can kind of pick and choose the elements of the boldness and the color because, like you said, it's not super limited. Although that said, I think that the Super Seawolf skeleton is getting pretty hard to come by. Hearing that one's a tricky one to get down, and then the pineapple, every time I check, it seems to be sold out or nearly sold out, and then some more sort of stock comes up. But I reckon that'd be such a fun watch to wear.
I've got a question for you. This is not just Zodiac exclusive. I think my stance on this is pretty well known. Certainly looking over at my watch collection, which is, pretty hectic. Where are you at on like color on watches?
Oh, I love it. We love color. I think it's the more, like, if it's well done, the more the better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something that comes with experience or more watches? Like, the traditional thing is like, you buy a silver dial, you buy a black dial, then you maybe get a blue one, and then you start with, hypercolor.
Yeah, for sure. Because once you have the boring dials and the safe choices down, that's when you want to start having fun. You probably wouldn't buy, say the Rainbow Skeleton as your first watch. You could, but it probably wouldn't be your first and only watch. It's probably, I've got 4 or 5 watches. This is really fun and it speaks to me.
Yeah.
It's sort of like you wouldn't buy, a candy pink Rolex or whatever it is, or the Coral as your one and only. You probably would have, some boring black dive watches or a dress watch or whatever, and then you start to realize that they sort of look the same and you want something that looks a bit different. Or a Zodiac say on the back of the pineapple, a slice of the good time. That's what it says. I love it.
Fair enough. One other question about sort of colour in watches. Was there a point when colour became, and like that exuberant use of colour became cool, or like became a trend, or is it just that has always been there, or are we just looking at the outliers?
I think 2020. I think the pandemic.
Okay.
It was sort of, that was when it exploded to me. It was just everyone wanted something a bit more fun and kind of smile evoking on their wrist.
Yeah, there were a lot of press releases about we need some happiness.
Yeah. Yeah, that was when Rolex did their colourful OPs, which was like I mean, obviously they've done stellar dials and that sort of stuff 40 years ago, but I think the last time we saw that much kind of fun and interesting dials, whether it be patterns or colours or stones, was, the 70s and 80s.
I'm going to ping it a bit earlier than 2020, Andy, I reckon. I reckon it was the Rolex Rainbow, the more recent Rainbow.
Oh, yep, the rose gold, yeah.
Like it might have been a slower burn, but I reckon people are like, oh, this is fun. Like obviously, they had the Tigers watches, and like there's plenty throughout history, but I think that was a watch that was like cool and colourful in the same sort of sentence, and that's where we started seeing other brands like pick up that this is something that might have a bit of, it didn't have to be the weird.
Yeah. And it's sort of funny to see the more traditional brands go through like their take on colour, like the certain houses going through that Art Deco style of like, oh, we could do a burgundy dial. Oh no, that's kind of crazy. Or like a dark hunter green. Burgundy, navy blue, and a dark green, and then we'll do the same thing with some patterns, and then 3 years later it's
Zodiac's there with Photoshop pulling the filters all the way.
Yeah. As much contrast as we can. More. But yeah, awesome.
Hurt my eyes.
Zodiac's a great brand. They've been on my radar since I started reading literally Worn and Wound, one of the first sort of online watch publications. It's that price point where if you want to add to your collection, you can, $1,500, $2,000, easy buying. It's a great brand for a first watch as well. Like it's one of the brands I've kind of toyed up with getting for my first ever serious watch. Legit history. The people there are legit. The designs are legit. The collaborations are legit. So, Felix, where can people check out Zodiac watches? Say I'm in Melbourne, say I'm in Australia. Where can I?
Well, Australia, it's great. Easy answer. There's one place. There's Time and Tide. They've got a physical shop in Melbourne. They've also got an online shop on the internet. In other parts of the world, best bet is to head to zodiacwatches.com. We'll link it all up as per usual.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think it's safe to say. Maybe Jason Heaton's third book. Maybe he needs to get a Zodiac in there. Maybe some colour.
Well, there's only one way to find out the watches in Sweetwater, the second of the Tusker series, and that is to get the man, the myth, and the honest to God legend, Jason Heaton, on the line.
So many legends. Last time we spoke to Jason Heaton, he had just hit print on his first novel, Depth Charge. That was a few years ago, and he's now got his sophomore novel, Sweetwater, which has just been launched to, I'd like to say, worldwide acclaim. So we thought we should probably get him on for a chat. Of course, Jason is much more than just the author of Rollicking Dive Adventures. He's the co-host of the Grey NATO, a watch guy, and maybe the only person on this call who could actually win a season of Alone. Jason Heaton, how are you?
Don't sell yourself short now.
I think you could do it. Felix, I reckon you'd have a good crack at Alone.
I don't have any of the skills. I could just sit there and not do much.
You've got a bit of hidden strength. I reckon you could build a nice kind of...
Maybe. I was trying to hype up the guest, Andy, but...
You just need a gill net. You need to get a gill net working for you, and you've got it.
That's a new word in my vocabulary after watching Alone. Gill net. It seems like it's like, yeah.
Are they those ones that go in like a basket?
No. They're like a net in the water where you just have it draped down and the fish kind of swim into it.
Okay.
Like a tennis net that you string across a stream.
It's make or break.
Yeah.
They do some training beforehand. Maybe I'll just pick it up quickly there.
Well, you've obviously watched it, Jason, but one of my favourite things is kind of watching the later seasons and seeing how they learn from previous contestants and previous seasons. So the gill net's a big one. And don't lose the fire starter, whatever that's called, the flint stick.
How many times did that happen? It seems like people were losing those things all the time.
That seems pretty fundamental to me. If first there was fire, then there was everything else.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, we're talking about Alone. How would you rate yourself in Alone, Jason? Would you back yourself to win it, or are you?
How many days?
I think I'd do. I think I'd put in a good strong showing. I'm not sure I could outlast some of these guys. I'm not I don't call myself a hunter or fisherman by any means. So I think I might struggle with the killing large animals kind of stuff or setting snares. But I think we'd probably all be surprised at the skills that would come out if we were pushed to our limit. So
I'd have you down for 30.
But
or
I can
40
tolerate
days.
cold, and I can, I can build stuff and that sort of thing. So yeah, I might do okay.
Season 10, season 11, one's coming up.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, aside from surviving the cold, what's been happening? It's been like we were saying offline, a couple of years since we last had you on. I think it was for the book reading of Depth Charge, which we all loved, and it went really well. Tell us what's been happening.
Yeah, I mean, much belated thanks for having me on for that. It was you guys were one of the first of anybody that I spoke to after that published, and we did a little bit of a reading, and that book sold well, and people were eager to get on with the second one, and we can, I guess, get into it a bit, as much as you want, but the second book was what largely consumed my past, I would say 12 months at this point. That, and then, as I was saying before we started here, I kind of found myself this year kind of back in the watch world, kind of just by chance, just did a few trips, and TGN's going well. So yeah, I would rate 2023 pretty high in my book. It was a good year.
So obviously we're here to talk about Sweetwater. So for anyone listening, this will come out just before Christmas. I think there's maybe still time to get a physical copy depending on where you are. Certainly a digital copy. Can you give us the top line summary of what the blurb to use a publishing term of this novel?
It is a sequel to Depth Charge, in as much as the hero is the same. So it's my American underwater archaeologist, Julian Tusk, who goes by Tusker. And in Depth Charge, we found him in Sri Lanka, kind of going up against a rather nefarious villain and his henchman, one of whom was named Schultz. May or may not have been influenced by someone on this podcast. So he got himself out of that mess, and then now we find him back in the U.S., closer to home. And this is an entirely different adventure. A few of the kind of supporting characters from Depth Charge pop up in this book, and it involves some political intrigue. This time, instead of a shipwreck, it's a plane crash deep underwater that he has to investigate. And it was kind of inspired by a couple of incidents that I was reading about in the news. I think, nowadays there's no shortage of good plots that pop up in the news. There's, underwater pipelines in the Baltic that are being blown up that, just they almost write themselves. But yeah, there was this particular plane crash not far up the road from me here, in which a senator was killed in a plane crash back in, I would say, I think it was the early 2000s. I just was always intrigued by that. It always seemed a little strange. And so that kind of got me on my way to spinning up a plot for this one. And yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the way this one turned out. I think people will find it a little bit darker in terms of the tone of the book, a little more introspective. Tusker's a bit more of I don't want to say damaged, but he was definitely affected by the events of Depth Charge, and we find him kind of dealing with that and revisiting some of his family history. There's some flashbacks in which his father's own story kind of comes up in this book. So, and of course, for the audience, there's plenty of watch content in it as well. So
I finished reading it. I whizzed through it in a couple of days.
Oh, nice.
That's why you've been so offline, Felix. Haven't been able to get through to him. You've been consumed by Sweetwater.
No, well, it was a great because I knew we had this coming up, so I could legitimize it as kind of work. So I could go, and it was very much your sort of your page turnery, thrillery sort of content. So, and it's not particularly stressful, or you don't have to take too much time with it. It's a pretty I'm going to say airplane sort of novel, but I don't mean that in any sort of pejorative sense. It came across to me as very much a sort of, you've matured as a writer as the character has matured as well. I can't remember what I was originally going to say there.
Were you surprised by the ending? I think many people have said they were surprised by the ending.
No, there were two things that I sort of came back to about it. One was I liked, this is two questions in one. I've remembered what I was going to ask. I liked the father sort of flashbacks, and that was, not giving too much away. He was also a sort of former military diver. Would you ever consider writing a story from Tusker Senior in some sort of Tusker expanded cinematic universe.
Like a prequel. Like
prequel.
Mm.
Oi. And the second
it
one...
didn't occur to me. Yeah,
it
didn't occur to me until recently. And then I thought, I can see why people write prequels or why they do prequel films, because it is a tantalizing option. It's there now. I've built this character with some depth, pardon the pun, but and I think there's something to be mined there. So who knows?
Yeah, and it sort of certainly allows you to explore that love of like military gear and that world in a more sort of fully fleshed way. But coming back to your point about the political nature and that potentially dark ending, given the world context in which it was written, where there's clear that influence is there of political scheming and shenanigans. Did you find yourself having to alter any of that as the world's environment moved along? Like, because there's a subplot with Russia, again, not going too much into detail.
Yeah.
Was that kicking off as you were writing it, or was that not a concern for you?
I think, even before the conflict in Ukraine kicked off, we had some, in this country, obviously some questions about a past president's influence, from the other side of the world. And I just think that's a rich vein to mine anyway. I think that look, there's never, in this country, people have been talking about plots and political influence from other countries back to the Manchurian Candidate or JFK assassination, etc. So I think people just seem to like those stories, and I think they're just so rich for picking, and so it didn't really take necessarily any current events or recent history to make me think of that. As I mentioned, it was partially inspired by a kind of a mysterious plane crash that happened here with our own state of Minnesota's senator back, I don't know, probably 15 or so years ago. And that always kind of stuck in my head as something that would bear more investigation or writing about or fictionalizing. So that's kind of what I did.
I've not read it yet. I'm old school, so I need to get a paperback copy because I can't do the Felix screen time, but I'll have to grab one. But I'm curious as to how much better you think you got sort of writing a second book and all those learnings you get sort of after releasing it and all the feedback and, good, bad, ugly, whatever it was. But it's such a weird thing to kind of step out and do for the first time. I can only imagine that you think this second book is exponentially better.
Yeah, I do. I think, whereas I think Depth Charge was more of, when I set out to write Depth Charge back in 2020, I had this notion of, I had kind of plowed through all of the Ian Fleming Bond novels, some Clive Cussler, which I'm a little on the fence about in terms of my own tastes, Alistair MacLean, things like that. And I thought, the thrillers that we're given these days, a lot of them are kind of Jack Carr, John Grisham, Dan Brown, etc. And
Lee Child,
Lee Child, and there's a lot of swagger, a lot of big masculine characters, ex-military, lots of gunplay, that sort of thing. The characters often seem infallible, like you look at a Dirk Pitt, and it's like every decision he makes is the right one. He just comes across so smart and so tough, and and I always wanted to kind of riff off of that formula, but with a more flawed character and stronger female characters, but yet tap into that vein of like really great villains from kind of the Bond novels, and so that's kind of what I did with Depth Charge. And I think the book, it's set in Sri Lanka. It's a more exotic place to most people, and I think the villain was a little larger than life. With Sweetwater, I think it's Felix, you'd have your own opinion about this, but I feel like it's a bit more of a quieter. The plot feels a little more grounded. The villains are a little more realistic, and I think what I learned from one book to the next was, in order to kind of craft a good, solid kind of plot and storyline and keep the timeline straight in my head, take the time before I sat down to write each chapter and map out the entire book. So I actually did that. I did not do that with Depth Charge.
Really?
I'd never written a novel before that. And so I remember painting myself into corners with Depth Charge where I would have to back out and figure out like who's doing what, where, and when. And oh boy, I forgot about this. And, now I've got to change whole chapters. With this one, I had the whole timeline like on a large sheet of paper that I had hash marks on, and I could go back and forth and refer to that.
Did you use any I know there's sort of publishing tools for like planning novels and like that sort of logic flow? Nothing like
that. No, it was literally paper and pen on a big white pad, which I have somewhere here. It's just the way I work. It was just easy to just kind of do, whatever they call them, bubble and stick diagrams and big, like literally just a big timeline.
Have you got a bit of a universe planned out? Like, can we expect a bunch more books? Do you think this is sort of a serious part of your future?
I mean, I won't lie. If I could choose a way to kind of, I'm advancing in age these days. Of course, we aren't the young. We were talking about that too. We aren't the young, first gen sort of watch bloggers that we used to be. And as I'm kind of moving through my career, I think that'd be kind of a neat way to sort of, ease into sort of retirement age. Older age would be to just write novels. I would love to do that. That would be a dream of mine. It's probably fairly unrealistic, but I do want it to be a big part of my life, only because I think it brings me the most pleasure. It's just pure fun. It's absolute pure joy to just come up with stuff out of the blue. I can make my characters the larger than life people. I can put myself into characters. I can put people I don't like, I can make them into villains. No offense, Felix.
I'm okay being a villain.
Yes, yeah. You were obviously a good henchman. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it will continue. Yeah, I'll just take one at a time, but yeah, definitely.
It's interesting that you say it's sort of, a different tone of this book. And, you sort of said the first one, Sri Lanka, was a bit more exotic for most. I thought this was very closer to home because this is an area you're very familiar with, that sort of Great Lakes part of the world.
Yeah.
And I was wondering how much, there's a lot of, for anyone that knows you and follows you, there's a lot of, clearly you're both interested in diving. How much Tusker is in Heaton and how much Heaton is in Tusker?
I don't think there's much Tusker in Heaton. I think there's probably a fair bit of me in him because I suppose any writer will tell you that he puts himself into or herself into his or her characters in some sense. It's really you write what you know and the most familiar. So you'll see references to watches and Blundstone boots and Barber jackets and old Land Rovers and things like this. I mean, clearly people don't have to guess too hard where all of that comes from. But it to me it's what I enjoy in life, and I think my hero, my protagonist, is he's the one through whose eyes you're seeing most of the story, and so maybe at some point, as you mentioned earlier, a prequel where we're going back to Jonathan Tusk, Julian's father, and set it back in the 60s or 70s would change. I'd have to step out of my own kind of eyeballs and visit somebody else's brain, I guess, or somebody else's life. So, yeah.
Amazing. So I've not read it, Felix has. Can you kind of surmise plot without giving away any spoilers? Just for the people listening, get them to buy a copy afterwards.
Yeah. So in this book, Tusker's about a year back from his last adventure in Sri Lanka, and he's living in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which is on Lake Superior. Arguably the largest lake in the world, at least by surface area. And he teaches underwater archaeology there. And in the book, he's kind of going through some tough times, kind of coming to terms with some of his things that he faced in Sri Lanka. And at the same time, he gets this email from a reporter asking about a certain plane crash that happened back in the 1970s that his father, who was a Navy diver at the time, happened to be part of the investigation into what caused this crash. And Tusker doesn't think much of this, but as kind of things start to unfold, he starts to uncover, as he's looking back into some of his father's memorabilia and mementos at his home, he comes across some evidence that suggests that maybe there was more to this plane crash than was reported initially. Mm-hmm. And as he digs deeper, he kind of finds himself embroiled in a bit of a nefarious plot that happens to coincide with an upcoming presidential election. So he delves into this almost reluctantly at first, but then like he kind of almost has no choice. And also involved is a certain reporter, a woman from one of the newspapers in Michigan, the Detroit Free Press, and she's investigating this. And so they kind of team up in this investigation. And Tusker also has help from an old friend of his. There's just a few characters that kind of help him along the way. And so if I say any more, it'll probably start to spoil it a bit. But that's kind of where we're at.
Top-notch henchperson this time.
Thank you.
Really well done. That was a great side character.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Who was it inspired by?
Not me. I'm guessing.
No, you will find out quickly that is not inspired by Felix this time. No, there's a certain woman who I know who was very vocally kind of volunteered to be a henchperson.
Oh, great!
After Depth Charge last time around, I held a little bit of a contest last time after Depth Charge. I had some T-shirts made.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember in Thunderball. The whole crew of the Disco Volante, which was the villain's boat, all wore like crew T-shirts, and I always had this idea in my head that, I kind of enjoy the marketing side of things and merchandise anyway, and so I thought I'm going to make henchperson T-shirts, and so I held a bit of a contest, and I said whoever posts like the most convincing story and photo on Instagram, convincing me that they're a henchperson, I will send a free T-shirt. So I did that, and this woman that responded was one of them, and she lives it. I mean, she looks the part. She's tough as nails, etc. Yeah. And again, I don't want to give too much away, but she kind of fit the bill, and was more than happy to kind of be a bit of a model for that character.
That's
and
cool.
So hopefully, I did right by her. She's a very pleasant person. She's a very nice person. She's not evil in any way. So
that's awesome. T-shirts.
I'm pretty sure Austin Powers also did the henchman thing. But maybe.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Of course, it would not be a Jason Heaton novel without some meaningful watch inclusions. What I really liked is that there's not too much watch, which is I think right.
Mm-hmm.
But the watches are actually used and sort of serve as important plot devices. How do you work out like sort of characterizing a watch or like finding the right piece or way to implement it?
It was fairly important to me to include watches for a number of reasons. One of which, I'm a full-on watch nerd and love kind of, I mean, you can't have a dive thriller without some dive watches in it. But I was really careful because I realized that I don't want to limit my audience to people that are just going to nerd out about watches, despite the fact that everybody who has been buying the book and posting photos of it always put a watch on top of it, which has kind of become a bit of a hook. It's kind of a fun thing. But I don't want to lay it on too thick. I really did not want to go into detail about a specific reference of a watch or, have Tusker going shopping. Yeah, exactly.
Unlike the reference before, this one has an updated silicone escape node.
Copy paste Tanuki review done.
It's little Easter eggs, right? Little Easter eggs.
Yeah. So, I remember reading. There was a series of books called the Doc Ford Mysteries that was written by an American novelist named Randy Wayne White, and I always liked the books. And again, this guy was like a marine biologist who lived in some swampy area of Florida, and he would always get himself into these issues, these mysteries. And they were going fine. I think they mentioned that he had a Rolex at some point. And then one book popped up, and he was wearing a Graham swordfish. And it wasn't just you remember Graham, the watch brand? And they had this dive watch called the Swordfish.
Yep.
And it was such a specific reference. It was like, I don't remember specifically the Graham models now, but it was like the Graham Swordfish Night Mission, DLC or whatever it was. It had this big name, and it was like it popped up in the book, and it ruined it for me.
It's an
I just thought
watch.
you can't be that specific. You can't, especially with a brand like that. I'm like tonight I'm wearing my Bremont Supermarine. I felt like there are certain brands that would fit in a book and certain that wouldn't. Now, a Bremont would be a great watch for a protagonist in a book like this, but like Bremont's not going to resonate necessarily or make sense
it would
to an
feel
audience
like
that maybe isn't into watches.
Inclusion.
Yeah, they need to pay. They need to
There
pay
you
a
go.
bit of money.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah.
So you sell these directly from your shop, jasonheatonauthor.com.
Yes,
Signed copies?
I do. And they're on Amazon as well. And
Felix,
I
do you want a
believe
copy?
now bookstores can get them printed through Amazon. I believe Amazon works as a distributor, but Amazon or basically.
Nah, we'll go
on my
direct to you.
website
Felix,
for
do you want
signed
a
copies.
printed copy? I'm just using your credit card to buy a couple now.
Sure, why not?
Done.
Business write-off. Yeah.
Done. 2 copies. I want special messages in there. jasonheatonauthor.com. That's where to get it. You're going to get that email.
Is this my Christmas present, Andy? Is this what?
Fantastic.
Thanks, Felix. Yeah.
I've got a question. Speaking of the business side of books, in your afterward, I haven't read the afterward. You talked about how you explored like using a literary agent, and like you spoke to a literary agent, and you self-published.
Yeah.
What was that process like, and why did you, in the end, decide to sort of go your own way?
Well, when I was in the process of kind of completing the manuscript for Sweetwater, I also write a weekly Substack kind of blog, and one of my subscribers, a fellow named Michael, is a literary reviewer, but he also was a first-time novelist, and he wrote to me privately and said, if you're interested, I'd be happy to connect you with an agent that I've gone through who happened to help me get my book published. And so I said, great. So he made the introduction. I sent my manuscript. The agent was based in Belfast in Northern Ireland. And he liked the story. He helped me edit the manuscript. He had a good list of publishing contacts to reach out to. And when I finalized it it was almost exactly 1 year ago when I finalized the book, he started sending it out, and we started to get some feedback, some very good feedback. Some of the editors at publishing houses they enjoyed the story. They said, this isn't really in our wheelhouse. This isn't the type of book we're looking for. A lot of just, radio silence from some of them,
Sure.
whatever. And as we were working through it, about halfway through the year, so about 6 months into this process of kind of waiting and getting a few notes of feedback, I had another conversation with this author, Michael, and he was telling me about the process that he went through and how long it took. And I quickly realized that even if a publisher accepts this book, it could be another 2 or 3 years before it sees the light of day.
Yeah.
Then I was remembering back. I thought, I need momentum. I liked the process in Depth Charge of stuff like making the T-shirts. And I always include stickers with the signed copies that I had made by the wonderful designer Paul Andrews that I used for the cover. I just like marketing it. I like doing these podcasts. I like having my own website and designing
You've
the cover.
got the
And
skills and networks and audience to be able to sustain it. Yeah.
I have, in terms of, in our world, I would say my reach is fair-sized in terms of social media and co-hosting a podcast. In terms of making a bestseller, like 100,000 copies, no, I can't do that. But I do okay with my own little network. And so I just made that decision, and I told my agent, I said, I'd like to self-publish this. Let's give it till the end of August. And so we did, and he was very happy to do that. And we kind of left on good terms. And so then at the end of August, I just pulled the trigger and approached Paul, my cover designer. We whipped up a cover. He did the typesetting. I had a friend do the proofing, and off it went. And lo and behold, it went live in early November, and that's where we're at. So, and happily, it happened to be right at, the holiday time, and people seem to be enjoying buying them for gifts.
I get on corporate credit cards for the
right.
It's work expense. It's a work expense.
Right.
For Felix, anyway. I don't have to worry about it. Is there, have you noticed any typos in the book?
Oh, Andy, can't ask that. It's the worst feeling, noticing a typo after something's been printed.
Well, I will say this, and feel free to tell me, but I was reading a wonderful book. I just finished it yesterday. You might be familiar with our friend Oren Hartov. I don't know
Sure.
if you've met him. So Oren's father is an author, novelist, and I've just finished a book by him. Wonderful book, actually. It was called The Last of the Seven. I'll put in a little plug for him. Mm-hmm. But I caught one typo in the book, and it was just like if instead of it, or something like that. And it's funny how I noticed that, because I don't have a particular eye for detail at that level. But in Depth Charge, and I'm not going to call out who I had proof that book or anything like that, but like there were a few errors in that book and some actual factual errors that if I ever do a second edition, I will correct. With Sweetwater, I used someone that I really trust, and I think he did a great job, and he not only proofed it for things like typos, which I hope there were very few, he also was very valuable in his input about his experience with Navy diving and kind of knowledge about that area. So it was a good. I feel more confident about the quality of this book in general.
A unique set of skills. And speaking of, you're geared up to do audio recordings. Are we getting an audio book?
So yes, I'll tell you what. My dilemma about audiobooks, even going back to Depth Charge, because people have been asking me for a couple of years now. First of all, I put out a call for auditions to professional narrators, and I got like 50 auditions, some which were tremendous, really, really good, some which were pretty bad. And yet then I was hearing from a lot of people saying, we just wish you would do it yourself. You have a good voice for it. You've got recording gear. And that's really what my preference has been, was to do the audiobooks myself, because I couldn't bear the thought of somebody mispronouncing, especially in Depth Charge, where you have a lot of Sri Lankan town names, people's names, specific places, even in this book, regional stuff that could very easily be gotten wrong. And I thought I'd be obsessively listening to every bit of that recording and always having to tweak and go back and have them correct. It'd be easier for me to do it. But my dilemma was, what do you do about accents? Especially in Depth Charge. A lot of it takes place in Sri Lanka. There's several Sri Lankan characters. There are some professional narrators that will emulate specific accents, a Northern English accent, an Australian accent, etc. And so that was kind of my roadblock. I thought, I can't do those myself. I will not even attempt. I'll make a fool of myself and embarrass myself and insult people. And then I've realized lately that it's actually become a bit of a thing where to emulate accents is considered somewhat offensive and kind of taboo in some quarters. And I don't want to do that. So in a way, it's kind of freed me from having to even do accents. So I just thought, I will just read it in my voice. I can maybe alter the pitch a little higher for a female character or something, but I'm not going to attempt, I think Ian's English accent or whatever. So, yeah.
You can evoke a character in a different way, not just through accent. Like the obvious one is, I'm not going, no one here is going to try and do, a Sri Lankan accent without, I would say something offensive in the year of 2023.
Yeah.
But I think there's other ways you can get that character across. I think it's evocation as opposed to imitation, which is the, do it. So we're getting one?
Yeah, 100%. It's happening.
Yeah.
It's confirmed here.
Yeah. And I think I'm just going to do 2 books just back to back, just do them. And I've had a couple of friends, one of whom you know well, and you just met in Dubai recently. My co-host has kindly offered to help with the production, and he's obviously a wonderful audio editor.
Cut rates.
I have a with Depth Charge, I had a good friend here who's a music composer and producer, and he composed a little theme. It's on the website. If you go, there's a link. I think it's called Music or Score. Yeah. And there's a bit of a theme music that he composed, and it's so evocative. It has this sort of old school John Barry Bond theme sort of thing. And I always like that in audiobooks where it fades in, with a little bit of music at the beginning. I think we can incorporate that. So, yeah, I think we could have fun with it. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
There we go.
Well, this is interesting. I like this.
I feel like I'm being kicked off the stage at a speech.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's lovely. See, these are nice touches that you can do because you're doing it yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not just Depth Charge though in your life. You mentioned your TGN co-host. How's that part of the world going? How is the world of year and most certainly watches?
It's been a really good year on that front as well. We had some some great guests on the show. Most notably, I think a highlight was Don Walsh, one of the first two men to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, who just died a few weeks ago. We had him as a guest on this past summer. The community continues to grow, and one thing that we've really enjoyed was we added, I don't know if you're familiar, you probably are, with Slack, kind of the online community tool that a lot of businesses use for communicating within a company or whatever. We launched that for our subscriber base, and it's transcended the podcast. I think people are thrilled to be part of this, to sign up as a subscriber in order to only, okay, sure, they get the podcast, but they get access to this community, and we have well over 1,000 people in that community, and they're all just contributing. I mean, I can't even keep up. And first, when we talked about doing this, I thought, how are we going to moderate this and keep up with this? And it almost kind of self-polices itself. The people are, nice. I've never had such a robust kind of group of really kind, helpful, like polite people in one place. I mean, I'm sure you guys have spent enough time on watch forums and in the comments of, like, Hodinky articles. People just get so snipey and negative, and there's none of that. There isn't even a swear word. I mean, it's the most cordial bunch, very helpful. It's been a game changer. It's really, really been.
Well, I've got Felix's corporate card out again, so maybe I'll.
I mean, look, we didn't go with Slack. We went with Discord, and we might not have 1,000 people, but very similar experience. It's and I think it's that it is, not to sound like the old guys in the room, as we were talking about before. It's that old forum experience of. There's less of that visibility around, say the Instagram comment section. So there's, it's a nicer place to be. So.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's like a home on the internet for this. You're right, because the comment section on, places like Hodinky's gotten a little bit, I mean, obviously pretty nasty at times. And then the rest of watch social media is fast moving, and TikToks, and to me and Felix, I think definitely unrelatable at this point. And then you have guys that just anonymously join our Discord, and I mean we had one incident where someone joined and sent some inappropriate things, but we changed the controls there. But otherwise, it's like a lovely. It's a couple hundred people, so not as big as yours yet.
And I'm at a point where I'm fairly familiar with a bunch of their personalities. I'm like, Dave 82's fired up again, or whatever it is.
Sorry if you're listening, Dave. But it is fun. It's fun. That's cool. We'll have to we'll join up. I won't do it now. And I love the theme music as well. Maybe we'll grab a copy and we can use it as the intro music or something.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing I saw you pop, I think was your Substack, which we'll also link up as per the unofficial rules of mutually supporting podcasts. You were talking about you got out your watch collection and like played with it a la Barbie dolls. And I find people that work in watches' relationship to watches fascinating. Like, I've always struggled to keep the watches I own and enjoy as things that I, wear for myself, different to, my professional life. And it's very easy, I think, to get burnt out and sort of, or like have that, I need the latest, I need the greatest, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Has spending time away from, that 100% professional watch life made you fall back in love with watches, or did you just need to have some time away, or are you moved on in your life from that period of obsession?
I think all of that. I think I've when I was kind of deep into the show cycle of SIHH and Basel World and going on press trips every month and getting review watches and writing all those reviews, it took the fun away. And I remember even with my own watches for a very long time, and I would even argue to this day, I think with every new watch that I acquire, I'm still looking for that initial buzz that I got from my very first watch. That feeling you get with that very first watch. All of us remember that, whether it was in high school or earlier or later, or maybe just your first good watch, so to speak. I'm always looking to recapture that. And then you kind of get into that cycle of, nope, that's not it. Maybe the next one. And I think I've kind of stepped off that carousel, and I've acquired some nice watches this year, and I've actually felt like I'm finally kind of getting back to enjoying them. Some of them sort of came almost serendipitously, and some not. But
okay,
yeah, I'm having fun again.
I still remember. I think when we talk about it, I think you did a write up for Hodinkee sort of about that sort of the Grail Zalanga that you sort of were toying with and debating getting for a long time, and then it just didn't. You couldn't make it make sense. Consolidating down to get it, and then it wouldn't be something you worn. So now you're back. You're back, sort of enjoying the kind of consuming side of it. Did you let some watches go to kind of get to that point, or what have you picked up that has been worth picking up that you're like interested in?
I would think so. One of the most significant pieces, I guess, in my collection in general, but also one that just almost literally fell in my lap, was a first generation, like a first year Breitling Navitimer, 1954 Navitimer.
Oh, cool.
And it's a watch that I've long admired. I've loved Navitimers despite my kind of predilection towards diving watches. A friend of a friend found, no joke, a 1954 Navitimer in a thrift store for 50 cents.
Whoa.
50 cents in any currency is cheap. I don't care if it's Australian dollars or British pounds or anything. I mean, 50 cents is 50 cents. And he's not a watch guy, but he recognized it as something interesting and got in touch with me to get some insights into it. And I told him I will research it. I took it. I looked at the movement. I took pictures. I contacted a couple of very respected and well-known vintage dealers here in the U.S. For some estimates, and passed those on to him and said, I'd be happy to help you sell it, but I got to say, I'd love to have this for myself. And so I ended up with that watch.
That's cool.
And it was just one of those amazing stories that we all hear about and dream about. And while I didn't pay 50 cents, certainly, it's just such a meaningful piece. And I wore it for like a month straight after getting it, despite its really poor water resistance and age. That's one watch that I think the means by which I came by it, as well as its significance and just it's a beautiful piece, was like just such a high point for me this year, as well as a couple new dive watches that I got. I got the Pelagos FXD, which is a watch that could almost retire with just one watch on my wrist. I think it would be that one. It just can do everything. So you're still quite engaged with new watches, like you're seeing a new release and feeling that, I need to buy that. Should I pop down to the boutique sort of feel? Very few watches do that for me anymore. I happened to be on this press trip to Florida for the launch of that black dial FXD. Yep. And there was quite a few people there, and I wasn't there as press. I was there as Tudor asked me specifically to come and do underwater photography. Yep. Because they had all these press people there that would want underwater photos of them wearing the watch for their stories. Yep. For Worn and Wound or for Fratello, etc. And so I happily did it. And then when it came time to send my invoice, I had gotten so smitten with that watch, being able to wear it and be around it for a few days, that I said, "Can I take payment in a watch?"
Yeah, nice.
And they said, "Sure, we can do that." So they engraved the back for me with a very meaningful, engraving, and very poor business decision on my part. But I don't know. There was just something about that piece that just captivated me. It just has everything going for it.
It is. It does feel quite old school in its sort of aesthetic. Like it it's obviously a modern watch, but it doesn't feel like it's been designed with that sort of modern product way. It feels more sort of tool in some ways.
Yeah. And it's also it's this sweet spot where those of us in the know are like, oh yeah, Tudor is a part of Rolex. We like to kind of say that, but it's not Rolex, and so it has this quality kind of built into it and this history, but it feels like, especially a watch like that you can only wear on a single piece. It comes with like a Velcro strap. I mean, that seems so cheap, and so but it's like it's this perfect sort of high-low. It's all matte.
Straps.
It's really kind of a perfect. It's just a neat watch. Really great release this year.
You have to find a Grey NATO for it.
I'm looking for.
I've
got a question. No, sorry. I've got a question for Jason. This is I want a good quality aftermarket Velcro strap like that Tudor strap.
Yeah.
Do you have any hookups? 22 millimeter.
The guy that I would have suggested you go to,
Gas Bones?
Yes, he steps in and out of the business like every other month, you know. I've got a few of his old straps, and he was always the go-to guy. I'm trying to think who else makes a good Velcro strap. If I come across one, I'll send it to you. Or I'll send you a link or something. But yeah. Velcro is fun, isn't it? Yeah.
I think Phoenix NATO shut down, right? I think they're.
Do they do
Phoenix
Velcro?
is now, Phoenix NATO has now shut the doors. I think the owner, longtime owner, just retired. He was just done. Not Velcro certainly, but like I still think, you know, they're the kind of the thinnest, kind of most cheaply made sort of hardware of any NATO. But like the weave on the material and the color you can't be beat. You can't beat that Admiralty gray that they produce. They're such good straps. So if you've got them, hold on to them.
Yeah, well, I had someone direct messaging me trying to buy up because they knew I picked up a bunch over the years, and they're trying to grab them off me. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Maybe I'll hold on to mine for another 2 years and then put them on eBay.
Seriously, yeah. Like they were offering more than whatever the retail price was. It was a couple $100.
Incredible.
So, yeah. It's an interest there. It's hard to find. Well, Jason, I've ordered 2 copies. We're gonna join up Substack, and we'll get into the Slack as well. Maybe Felix and I can.
My goodness, this was. I'm glad I came on today.
We'll have
doing a little business here.
Made money. We can have like a couples account, like Andy and Felix.
OT. It's just OT. It's a business partnership.
You'll never know who it is.
Yeah.
That's how we subscribe to Chris Hall's fifth, newsletter.
I've checked out via FedEx, so I'm hoping it's here for Christmas and I can have something to read over the holiday break.
I see the order here. I will have it out tomorrow. It'll be there within the week, I'm sure.
Amazing. A little personalized message. That's what you get if you buy it from JasonHeatonAuthor.com.
By all means. Yeah. A couple of cool stickers.
You get stickers. Is there going to be a t-shirt competition? Because I love a t-shirt.
You know, I loved doing the t-shirts, and I'm not going to say no because in my heart I would love to do it. But man, stocking different sizes and all the giant boxes of t-shirts in the basement and shipping them was
it's painful.
That was rough. That's rough.
You get a cool t-shirt out of it.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Little watch caps for the cold Canadian.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's the
something
same
without
pain.
a size. Yeah. Something.
One size fits most.
Yeah. Caps, coffee mugs,
totes,
something. Yeah.
Coffee mug would be good. God, there's endless options. Well, we will link everything up, and I can't wait to read Sweetwater.
Well, thanks for having me on. This was a blast. Good to chat with you guys again.
Our pleasure.
Andy, this wraps up a trilogy of legendary interviews. We had Hammer, we had JCB, and then we've got Heaton. 3, the Mount Rushmore of watch industry legends right there. Honestly, really, really great always to chat to Jason Heaton. He's such a gentleman in the truest sense of the word. Thank you very much for that, Jason. Thank you also to Zodiac and everyone there for continuing to support OT the podcast. Thank you to everyone listening. Andy, what are the terms and conditions that people need to be aware of?
Okay, so after changing Jason, we may need to get a Substack. We're going to keep the Discord, but maybe I'm going to make Felix run a Substack every week.
Oh.
It's too late to get out of that, but let us know. Join our Discord. Of course, give 5-star reviews. Make sure you're telling your friends online, offline about the podcast. It all helps. Get the word out there. Share it. Follow us on Instagram, ot.podcast, and email us at otthepodcast.com. And of course, make sure you check out both of Zodiac, zodiacwatches.com and jasonheatonauthor.com. Support everyone who supports
Beautifully
us.
done, Andy.
See you next
Bring it
week.
home for Christmas.
Cue Sweetwater outro music.